Go, yeah, okay. Let's go right back to the root data from where they're making all these wonderful claims. And that was just the weather records. So then I started looking at those, saw lots and lots of problems, lots and lots of anomalies. And that's when I started thinking, how I'm going to do this. Tall Blokes Talk Shop, I'd noticed on there, had got this service stations project going, which had stopped back in about 2015. I thought, well, I'll resurrect it and see what goes from there. Simple as that.
All right. So tell us about some of the things that you have found as a result of that.
First thing that started, I thought, well, I'm going to review every single weather station. Started looking at lists of weather stations. Wait a minute, where's that one? Now, I know you reviewed this earlier, Dungeness, we call it. There's a soft G, by the way. You said Dungeness, if I remember right. Sorry about it. It's quite an important place. There's a nuclear power station there. I've worked there. I thought there isn't a weather station there. So I went, drove my car, went there, had a look, couldn't find it. They said there was one in a place called Folkestone, not far from where I live. Went there, couldn't find it. Dover, no, couldn't find it. That's when I thought, how come I'm not finding these places? So I sent them an email and said, where are they? And they basically said, well, why do you want to know? That's because I want to find them, sort of thing. And then started hitting this wall all the time of asking them for something. And the inquiries, the normal option, won't answer you. So you have to go down this crazy line of doing freedom of information requests. I'd already sent one to find out what the Commission for Instrumentation of Meteorological Observation CMO guide was, which categorizes the quality standard of weather stations. So I've got familiar with the process. I then asked them, well, you tell me all these stations, which ones of these are actually open and actually exist? And eventually they sent me back a list of 103 stations that simply weren't there, which is quite remarkable because there's only 302 on the list. More than a third of them didn't actually exist. So I said, okay, why are you doing that? They then gave this long highfalutin process that stations open, stations close. So they want to keep the data record going. Fine. I can understand that. They say they use data from other well-correlated stations to make up this model. Obviously, it's always computer model. It's never real figures. To come up with what the weather would be there if the station had closed. So I said, fine, that's great as well. Okay, you're saying that's peer-reviewed. So what are the stations you're using? And then you just hit a total you will not know. Now, this is absolutely crazy because some of the stations that they positively state as open on their own websites are also on the closed list as closed, which is very strange. And they are also making up, even to this month now, to today, details of the temperature, average daily temperature in those places by the month. There's places called Lowestoft, Newton Rigg, Nairn, and Paisley in Scotland, and they're producing by the month. So I said to them, well, what are the stations that you're producing now? Not historical ones. What are the ones you're going to use tomorrow or yesterday? And they refute. That's when I hit, totally, you're asking too many questions we are not going to answer. I've asked other questions on totally unrelated subjects, like why have you put into your archive records temperature readings which didn't occur, which you've said were expunged? Why expunging means get rid of them. You don't put them into the record. That just shouldn't happen. But that's exactly what they're doing. They've told me that they don't transfer data from one station to another, or rather the term is unmodified data. Mm-hmm. I've proven that at sites called Waddington and Wattisham, and there are others, by the way, Charter Hall is another one, that they have done exactly that. At Wattisham, which is a place in Essex, they picked data from a place called Wethersfield, which is about 25 miles away. It's not as if it's close by. And they have just implanted it straight onto the records. Why would you do that? Because it's only a bit of history. Leave it blank. They had actually left the record for Wattisham blank for a while when the station was close to being, it's an airfield station. So when the runway was being relayed, they didn't put in the data. Why would you be bothered about putting in data when none was taken? It's only history. Doesn't matter. I mean, if you haven't got any data for that, so what? But why deliberately transfer somebody else's? There's a reason. There's lots of other things that I've asked relating to other issues, which are distorting effects on weather stations. But it's this, It's this whole history rewriting that seems to be very peculiar, and they point blank refuse to discuss.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's drill down on that because, as you say, one could understand you want an historical record of whether in this area
Yeah.
and this particular station closes, but you've got other well correlated stations, so you can kind of
Yeah.
keep there. One could understand that
Yeah.
if someone was being above board and on the level with all of this and putting the calculations out there and have the little asterisk to note, well, this station is closed, but we're correlating from these stations. I don't think people who would have a problem with that. But as you say, all this secrecy of you can't know how we're doing this and the sausage is just coming out of the factory and you cannot see into the factory, it obviously means something is going on. As you say, all of the other fidgeting and changes of the historical record that they're making, there must be a reason for this. Let's spell it out for people. Why would they be interested in changing this record?
Well, there's a political motive. I think I'd be blunt as to say that. In the last 2 or 3 days, the Met Office has just brought out its latest state of the climate thing for last year. It's full of such preposterous nonsense that you can't believe anybody would see anybody calling themselves a scientist would say that large parts of the east of England will be underwater in 25 years' time, right? That's what they're saying. 2050, half of the country is going to be underwater, sort of thing. Well, it's not. I guarantee you it's not, because I know that, because 25 years ago, in fact, in 1975, when we were all being scared to death, a tutor actually stood in front of us and a whole lot of students and said, the world's going to run out of oil by the year 2000. And everybody went, oh. And he actually turned around and said, if you're that gullible to believe me saying that, you've got to start thinking again. And he then went on to a whole load of critical thinking exercises. But what is happening now is they've been politicized to scare the living daylights out of people. We give storms, and if it's a slight little bit of a blow now, we give it a name. We get named storms. Well, apparently, we've just had our third heat wave of the summer in the UK. I'd love to have seen it because I actually live in probably the hottest part of the country, and we haven't had 3 heat waves. Trust me on that one. But they've given a new definition to a heat wave, so they can say, "Oh, we've had one because it reached this temperature," which is not even that scary. If you were to speak to somebody from the US, for instance, the 28 degrees, which is about 80 Fahrenheit, is classed as a heat wave, they'd laugh at you. I mean, really, wouldn't you? I mean, a Texan would think that was nothing. But that's what they're doing over here. That they seem to be wanting to scare people. It's that sort of power control by putting fear into people, and we can then provide the solution. If you do this, it's all much very control. And you can see that that's what they're doing with the data to get to an end point that they want, to make it look as if we're all going to burn to death tomorrow or drown.